Coming up on Arirang News, South Korea is filing a complaint at the World Trade Organization over Japan's restrictions on trade. Seoul says the measures are politically motivated, discriminatory, and a violation of WTO rules. South Korea added more than 450,000 jobs last month compared to a year ago, bringing the unemployment rate down to the lowest level for August in almost 6 years. And more than 30 million people in South Korea will be traveling in the coming days for the Chuseok Thanksgiving break. We'll have the latest on traffic conditions. It's 4 p.m. here in Seoul. Thank you for tuning in to our afternoon newscast. I'm Devin Whiting. Tomorrow is the first day of Korea's Chuseok holiday. Many people living here in Seoul will be or are already traveling to see their families and relatives in other parts of the country. And our Lee Min-sun is at the Seoul toll gate with more on the pre-holiday traffic. Min-sun, how are things looking out there?
Hi Devin, I'm at the Seoul toll gate, a gateway to major highways that many people will be using to travel to other parts of the country. Like you said, the Chuseok holiday starts tomorrow from Thursday through the weekend for most people. Because it's relatively short, many people plan to start their journey a day early. So far, major highways have stayed clear from traffic congestion, but the number of cars is gradually increasing. As of now, traffic is expected to peak at around 6 p.m. A total of 33.5 million people are expected to travel during the holidays, and over 86% of them will go by car. The highways will be most crowded on Friday, the actual day of Chuseok, with some 8.9 million people mostly coming back to Seoul. But today, still some 4.6 million people are expected to hit the road. On average, there will be some 5 million cars on highways each day, which is 7.5% more than last year. And for that, it's expected to take a lot longer for people to reach their destinations. According to the Transportation Ministry, drive times to major cities could be up to 1 hour and 50 minutes longer than last year. From Seoul to Busan by car, it's estimated to take 8.5 hours. The same distance usually takes less than 5 hours outside of the holiday period. To Daejeon and Gangneung, it will take 4 hours and 40 minutes, which is almost twice the usual travel time. The traffic authorities will also provide real-time traffic information based on IT technologies. That information will be available on the traffic authorities' website and on mobile applications. Drivers can also check broadcasts and signs on highways for alternative routes with less traffic. I'll have more updates for this evening. For those driving, have a great holiday and be safe.
Indeed, safe is the word. Thank you, Min-sun. Now, President Moon Jae-in is wishing all Koreans a warm-hearted holiday and a generous spirit. In a video message to the nation, he said he hopes for a fairer society for everyone. Take a listen.
활력 있는 경제가 서로를 넉넉하게 하고 공정한 사회가 서로에게 믿음을 주며 평화로운 한반도가 서로의 손을 잡게 할 것입니다.
Moon also said the nation is moving in a direction that will lead to mutual prosperity for all. He offered consolation to those affected by Typhoon Lingling while thanking the first responders who work even during the holiday to keep the nation safe. Now, some said from the start that John Bolton was not a fit for the Trump administration. Now he's gone. His hawkish views as national security advisor, especially on North Korea, apparently were not to President Trump's liking. Bolton was fired Tuesday or quit, depending who you ask. Lee Seung-jae has this story.
Through Twitter on Tuesday, U.S. President Donald Trump announced that he had asked U.S. National Security Advisor John Bolton for his resignation, informing him that his services are no longer needed at the White House. The U.S. president added that he disagreed strongly with many of his suggestions, as did others in the Trump administration. Trump will be naming a new national security advisor next week. The latest announcement comes after months of rumors that the two clashed on policy, including on how to denuclearize North Korea. Some of their disagreements were openly seen in public, with Trump playing down North Korea's short-range ballistic missile tests, while Bolton called them out as violations of UN Security Council resolutions. During a press conference at the White House on Tuesday, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said he was not surprised by the news, adding that there were also times when he too had his differences with Bolton.
There were many times Ambassador Bolton and I disagree, that's to be sure, but that's true for lots of people with whom I interact.
Bolton was appointed as Trump's third national security advisor in April last year and was known for his hawkish views on regimes such as North Korea, Iran, and Venezuela. He's also widely known to have advised Trump to walk out of the second summit with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un in Hanoi back in February, after Pyongyang offered to dismantle only its main nuclear facility in Yongbyon. Meanwhile, according to Harry Kazianis, a senior director at the Center for the National Interest, a new national security advisor will be picked from a large pool of potential candidates. But U.S. Special Representative for North Korea, Stephen Biegun, who's been leading the negotiations for denuclearization talks, could be a strong choice. Watchers say Bolton's removal from the administration could have implications for North Korea-U.S. denuclearization talks, as Pyongyang offered to resume talks with Washington in late September. If held, the meeting would mark the first formal negotiations since the breakdown of the Hanoi summit. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
North Korea has long been criticized for its human rights abuses and for its unwillingness to improve. But the regime has now decided to accept parts of an international critique by the UN Human Rights Council. For one thing, it says it'll work with Seoul to help resolve the issue of families separated by war. Oh Soo-young filed this report with her smartphone.
North Korea said Wednesday that it will accept the recommendations of the United Nations Human Rights Council to help the thousands of families separated by the inter-Korean border. It was responding to a periodic review the Council conducts on all member states every 5 years. Since the 1950 to 53 Korean War, over 133,000 people in South Korea have registered as having immediate family in the north. There have been 21 official reunions since 2005, using a lottery system to enable a small fraction of them to meet. But with the meetings largely at the mercy of the political mood between the two Koreas, human rights observers have called for the two sides to hold reunions on a regular basis, especially as more than half the people are 80 years or older.
Well, our office has for a long time been advocating for assisting or having a human rights approach to the issue of family separation. And we've talked about different kinds of separated families, those who were separated by the war, but also victims of abductions by North Korea during and after the war. And they need to make sure that contact can be restored in a humane and a positive way. Also, things like restoring contacts in other ways, through telephone or communication via letter.
The North said it will accept 132 of the 199 total recommendations brought forward by the UN Council earlier this year, including better protection of the rights of the disabled. However, it did not accept recommendations on scrapping its political prison camps, its use of forced labour, or request that it give humanitarian workers unimpeded access to the North Korean population.
It's also evident that there are serious human rights violations that are continuing, both in terms of civil and political rights and also in terms of fulfilling basic economic rights and needs of the population. Our understanding is that North Korea said that these recommendations don't reflect the reality on the ground in North Korea, so that's one of the reasons that they're not being maybe accepted.
Still, observers hope the North makes steady progress in heeding international criticism of its human rights situation and actually implements the recommendations that it has accepted. The UN Human Rights Council is expected to officially adopt the periodic review around September 20th during its regular session in Geneva. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
South Korea is filing a complaint at the World Trade Organization against Japan for its trade restrictions. Seoul says Tokyo's actions are politically motivated. Hong Yoo reports.
South Korea's Trade Minister Yoo Myung-hee announced that Seoul is filing a complaint to the World Trade Organization over Japan's tighter export curbs on 3 strategic materials used in semiconductors and displays. The complaint will be officially initiated when the South Korean government hands in its request letter for consultations with the Embassy of Japan in Geneva and the WTO to seek the withdrawal of the export curbs. Seoul says Tokyo's export curbs are politically motivated, as the measures were retaliation by Japan for the rulings on compensation for Japan's use of Koreans as forced labor before and during World War II. And added that the export curbs are only directly targeted at Seoul, which shows that they are a discriminative action.
Japan announced its export curbs without any prior notice and executed the curbs just 3 days after the announcement. It has not only ignored procedural justification, but also lacks consideration for its neighboring country.
Trade Minister Yu laid out 3 major violations of the WTO agreement obligation which Japan has committed. She said Japan has violated the WTO's obligation to not discriminate. In addition, Japan has changed export procedures for 3 materials that were traded freely with a general permit so that now they require individual permits. And lastly, Seoul claims that Tokyo's export curbs have taken advantage of trade in retaliation against political issues. Yu emphasized that South Korea wishes to resolve the issue through bilateral talks with Japan. If the consultations with the Japanese embassy in Geneva and the WTO do not resolve the issues within the next 2 months, South Korea will request a WTO panel ruling. A case taken to the panel ruling could take more than 2 years to be resolved legally. 홍유, Arirang News.
South Korea's employment figures for the month of August are out, and they paint a brighter picture for job seekers. Kim Hae-sung has the details.
Around 452,000 jobs were added on year in August, the biggest jump since March 2017. According to Statistics Korea, it's the first job increase of more than 300,000 since January 2018. The employment rate for those aged 15 and above recorded 61.4%, up 0.5 percentage points on year. The number of people unemployed also fell by more than 270,000 to less than 860,000 people, making it the biggest monthly drop in more than 8 years. That brought the unemployment rate down 1 percentage point to 3%, the lowest level for August in nearly 6 years. The youth unemployment rate also fell near 3 percentage points on year to 7.2%. Statistics Korea attributed the job growth partly to a base effect, as only 3,000 jobs were added in August 2018. Jobs in health and social welfare services also grew by 174,000, but the manufacturing sector continued to see job creation fall for the 17th consecutive month, down 24,000 on year. Finance sector jobs also fell for the 8th consecutive month. Retail and wholesale jobs dropped more than 50,000. By age group, those in their 20s, 50s, and 60s saw job creation go up, but those in their 30s and 40s still saw job creation fall.
Near 400,000 jobs created in August were jobs for the elderly, boosted by government finances. But high-quality jobs like those in manufacturing continued to drop. The pace of the decrease, however, eased from the previous month, resulting in a total job growth in August of 450,000. If you look at the details, the quality of these jobs is still low.
Finance Minister Hong Nam-gi said the August jobs data is very encouraging and that the government will continue its policy efforts to help boost the job growth continue. Kim Hae-sung, Arirang News.
Now, September is when companies here in Korea start their open recruitment season, but many companies are planning to hire fewer employees than they did last year, meaning the competition will be even fiercer. Yoon Jung-min reports.
26-year-old college student Kim Tae-won starts the day studying with other job seekers to prepare for recruitment tests. Having majored in business, his goal is to secure a job at a financial institution such as a bank.
To land a job in finance, I had to obtain the relevant certificates during my college years. Other than that, I have joined school clubs, including the Financial Investment Club. Also, I did internships and took part in various activities outside school.
He's like many young people doing their best to get jobs they want. As many companies and public sector workplaces open recruitment in September, job seekers are busy preparing for applications and recruitment tests. According to job portals Incurred and Job Korea, the top 10 South Korean companies, including Samsung, LG, and POSCO, all begin recruiting new employees this month. Companies, however, plan to hire fewer employees in the second half of this year than they did last year, adding to concerns over the youth unemployment rate, which has hovered around 7% as of August. Overall, there is expected to be some 42,000 openings, down 4% from a year ago.
There are jobs available. There are jobs in small and medium-sized companies in the less desirable sectors, but students don't want to go there. Now, from the government's point of view, they have to recognize that this is not just a labor market problem, but it's a structural problem dealing not only with the labor sector, but also the education sector.
This year, companies plan to be more flexible when it comes to hiring. Some companies, including Hyundai Motor Group, said they will recruit employees based on demand rather than on a regular basis. To bring down the high rates of youth unemployment, many say there need to be changes to the economic structure, such as nurturing more future technologies and narrowing the wage gap between large and small companies. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
Time now for an in-depth look at the global markets on this Wednesday, and for that I'm joined on the line by Dr. Hwang Se-eun, Research Fellow at the Korea Capital Market Institute. Dr. Hwang, thank you for coming on today.
Thank you for inviting me today.
Now, overnight on Wall Street, stocks were higher for the most part. Here in Korea, the market's up for a fifth day in a row. What's the story?
In Wall Street, the stocks closed a little changed on Tuesday, weighed down by a continuing decline in tech shares, while Ford, a U.S. automaker, was pressured by a downgrade to its credit rating. Tuesday's move comes as value stocks outperformed their growth counterparts for the second straight session. Value's outperformance over the past two sessions worried investors as a rotation away from growth stocks could lead to a broad market decline. Asian stocks edged higher following a late rally in their U.S. counterparts. Shares gained in Japan, South Korea, and Hong Kong, though Chinese stocks were little changed. Chinese assets remain in focus after the country removed a foreign investment limit in its capital markets. With investors awaiting the European Central Bank's policy decision on Thursday and the Federal Reserve next week, expectations for more aggressive central bank accommodation increase. Korea's Kospi gained 0.84%, Japan's Nikkei rose 0.96%, and Hong Kong's Hang Seng edged higher 1.56% today.
Now, you mentioned the European Central Bank meeting on Thursday. With so much concern about a global slowdown, it seems there is a good chance for an interest rate cut there, rather. What do you think they'll do?
Investors' focus for now is centered on the European Central Bank's meeting on Thursday, which is expected to push interest rates even further into negative territory. Investors had bought bonds for many weeks on expectations that the ECB will dole out stimulus with a cut in interest rates of at least 10 basis points fully priced in. The monetary policy decision by the ECB is important because the ECB could set the tone for upcoming rate-setting decisions by the U.S. Federal Reserve and the Bank of Japan next week, and for the broader global risk appetite. ECB policymakers are leaning toward a package that includes a rate cut, a pledge to keep rates low for longer, and compensation for banks over the side effects of negative rates. On the other hand, concerns have been building that global central banks are reaching the limits of their stimulus options, especially those with negative interest rates and sub-zero long-term sovereign bond yields.
Now, the Korean government's announced support measures worth about 6 trillion won to stabilize exports. Explain those measures for us.
The government support plan includes implementation strategies for geological diversification and strengthening economic competitiveness of exporting industries in Korea. In 2018, major economic blocs such as the US, China, Japan, and European Union accounted for 53.4% of the annual export of South Korea. Russia and the Southeast Asian countries' share was 21%, while the share from South America, Middle East, and Africa was only 9%. For Southeast Asian countries, the plan will increase trade insurance supply for five most promising consumer products, including cosmetics. For Russia, the support focuses on automobile and agricultural machinery. For the developed countries, the plan will try to create new momentum by strengthening high-end consumer goods and developing retail relationships through online channels. The government plan is expected to reduce risk factors in Korea's export and enhance the growth potential for the local economy.
All right, Dr. Huang, that's where we'll have to leave it for today. Thanks for coming on, and happy Chuseok to you.
Happy Chuseok to you, too. Thank you.
Now, after a year of slumping iPhone sales, Apple's come out with new models and services, including the iPhone 11 Pro, an always-on Apple Watch, and the Apple TV Plus. Our Kim Da-mi takes a closer look.
Apple has unveiled its iPhone 11 series on Tuesday with better cameras and new colors. The new devices, the iPhone 11 Pro and the iPhone 11 Pro Max, will resemble recent models, but an Apple official says there's a big difference in the camera.
We have an amazing dual camera system with an all-new wide camera, with a new sensor, with 100% focus pixels for faster autofocus, 3 times faster in low light. And we have a new ultra-wide camera with a 120-degree field of view.
Apple has also stepped up its battery game. The iPhone 11 Pro will last 4 hours longer than the iPhone XS, and the iPhone 11 Pro Max will last 5 hours longer than the iPhone XS Max. The new series will be available from September 20th, starting at $1,000, but there won't be a 5G model. Apple also showed off its new Apple Watch Series 5, which features a new always-on Retina display for the first time. The watch's face will always be switched on, so users won't have to raise their wrist to activate it. A new 7th generation iPad also made it on the new Apple package. The new edition has a larger 10.2-inch display with a price tag starting at $329. On top of the new iPhone and Apple Watch lineup, people can now enjoy a new subscription service featuring Apple's original TV shows and movies. Those who buy a new Apple gadget can watch free for a year. Apple TV Plus will launch on November 1st in over 100 countries and regions. Apple Arcade will also let subscribers play over 100 games across Apple's product line. Both Apple Arcade and Apple TV Plus will cost under $5 a month, far cheaper than the popular streaming service, Netflix. Kim Da-mi, Arirang News.
Now, if you're in Seoul and not sure how to spend the Chuseok holiday starting tomorrow, the city offers a huge range of cultural sites and experiences. Our Kan Hyung-woo looks at where to go and how to get there.
With Chuseok being one of Korea's main holidays, it's a great opportunity to learn about Seoul's cultural heritage. The Cultural Heritage Foundation is opening up the capital city's 4 royal palaces for free. These palaces are from the Joseon dynasty, which lasted for about 500 years, starting in the late 1300s. Gyeongbokgung Palace will hold a concert of traditional music and give visitors an opportunity to try some of the desserts that were enjoyed by the Joseon royal family. At Changdeokgung Palace, visitors can also watch a traditional Bongsan mask dance and see some tightrope walking. If you're more of a night owl, you might want to check out the full moon through the night walking program at both Changgyeonggung and Deoksugung Palaces. The Jongmyo Shrine and the royal tombs of the Joseon dynasty, the memorials to the kings and queens of the past, are also open free of charge. Now, if you're visiting Seoul for the first time and you're not really sure how to get around the city, there's the Seoul City Tour Tiger Bus. There are 4 courses tourists can use to visit famous attractions like the Royal Palaces, Namsan Mountain, the Hangang River, and areas like Gangnam, Hongdae, and Itaewon. Reservations are available on the tour bus website in Korean, English, Chinese, and Japanese. Some of the courses are giving discounts for Chuseok with a ticket costing about $13. Once you book your course, you can get on and off that bus as many times as you want in a day. But since the bus for each course stops at different places and at different intervals, it's a good idea to check that information when planning your trip. 간영우, Arirang News.
And that brings us to the end of this newscast. Thank you for watching. More live news coming your way at 7 p.m. Korea time.